Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon. NFL Week 2 is here, and as always, I'm joined by one of the most accurate rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. We're going to break down waivers today, Sean. How's it going?
It's up, pretty good. Had a bit of a rough week one when it came to props, but like I mentioned in our Discord, I always tend to go light in week one because I always consider it more of a guessing game. We don't know what these coaches are thinking. We don't know which players are actually healthy or hurt or whatever. So I always love week two once we at least have some data to go off of. But just overall, week one was very sloppy, at least in terms of passing offenses and for fantasy. I mean, my God, the tight end position was a complete dumpster fire. I'm sure we'll get to that. But how was your week one?
Betting, it was like moving money around. I think it was like 500. But fantasy, I did pretty good. I mean, both of us, we had some really good calls on the pod, which we'll get to. So that was cool. But yeah, the passing games were just rusty as hell. I think the league average is 6.6 yards an attempt right now. So it's usually around sevens. So yeah, it's the passing games have some catching up to do, but there'll be some regression to the mean, and we'll talk about it all. And we'll jump right into our top waiver wire streamer targets at quarterback. But before we do, I just want to quickly remind everyone, all of our fantasy football content is available right now over at fantasylabs.com. You can find our award-winning projections, rankings, and more at fantasylabs.com. All right, waivers week one was a bit weird. I did hit on Baker Mayfield, and I think you like Baker Mayfield this week. Talk to me.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious to like Baker Mayfield this week after he was the QB2 overall in week one. Great call on that. Thanks to 4 touchdown passes, and like we mentioned, just the overall league was terrible when it came to passing offense. A lot of quarterbacks didn't see playing time in the preseason. Baker was one of those few starters that did play in preseason. It was only one drive, but at least it was something. But he looked sharp and on the same page with everybody. It's worth noting he did face the Commanders' defense, so we have to kind of put a little weight in that. They're probably a defense we want to target most weeks than not. But he has another great spot this week, I think, at Detroit. We've talked about the Lions having more of a pass funnel defense. That could be the case again this week, especially if DJ Reader finally makes his Lions debut this week. But also, on the other side, Tampa Bay's secondary is dealing with a ton of injuries. I mean, they are just decimated after week one. So I'm thinking the Lions offense should be able to have their way, put up a ton of points. That's just going to force Baker and the Tampa Bay offense to throw even more. So this could be a potential shootout. So, I think Baker Mayfield is a fringe QB1 this week. He opens the week as my QB13 and clearly is the top streamer this week, still available in 65% of leagues. Unfortunately, you might have to actually bid some cash, but if you're desperate, like if you had Jordan Love or somebody, it's probably worth it. Just for now, he's looking very sharp and has another good matchup this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a shootout. That total is climbing. I think it's at 51.5 right now. So, and they added another weapon with McMillan. So,
yep.
Tampa Bay's offense looking good. It's maybe it wasn't Canales after all, because I think like Bryce Young, man, he might be the worst quarterback. Like he was looking like Hackenberg out there. He just couldn't hit a throw. So
worse than Deshaun Watson? I don't know. It's close.
Yes. Yes. Worse
than Deshaun Watson? I mean, absolutely. I was watching that game closely.
Yeah. I watched both of them. I mean, Deshaun Watson didn't throw a pick on his first pass. Did he? No, he didn't.
Right. The second pass, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hey, twice as long. I got a few guys this week. So right now, the top guy on my list is actually Justin Fields. He's available in 89% of leagues at Denver, and he's my QB 11. Denver allowed, 4 carries, 30 yards, and a rushing touchdown to Geno Smith. I think it was one of the longest scrambles of his career. He just busted through the middle. So that's good news for Justin Fields. and he's going to get a ton of rushing attempts. It should be a close, low-scoring game, but that actually helps Fields. And if for some reason they give Russell Wilson the starting job back, even though Tomlin did start the press conference this week by saying we're preparing as if Fields is our guy, so it sounds like he is. But if Russ does make his return, a couple of other guys I have ranked 15, 16, and that's Matthew Stafford and Daniel Jones. Stafford's available in 64% of leagues, Jones 93% on ESPN. And in terms of Stafford, he's losing Puka Nacua, which hurts, but Tyler Johnson came on strong. Parkinson looks decent as well. Demarcus Robinson's still there. So they still have weapons even without Puka. And Arizona allowed Josh Allen to complete 78% of his passes at 10.1 yards an attempt. So this is still a good matchup for Stafford, and a decent offense. Is going through some kind of shakiness with the supporting cast in terms of injuries with Nacua and Avila, and he's got the left tackle suspended, but this matchup is still too good to pass up. And then Daniel Jones, same thing. Washington allowed the second most points to quarterbacks last week. We talked about Baker Mayfield, and he completed 80% of his passes at 9.6 yards an attempt. So right there with Arizona in terms of the efficiency. But Daniel Jones has these crazy home road splits in his career, and it's, I don't know what to make of them, because usually it's just kind of natural that you perform better at home, and you tend to be the favorite more and whatnot and score more points. But Daniel Jones has been a lot better on the road, and it's over now almost 6 years of data. 6.9 yards an attempt on the road compared to 5.8 at home. A 35-14 touchdown interception ratio on the road, 27-28 at home, which is just utterly ridiculous. Maybe that East Rutherford crowd gets in his head or something. I don't know. But this seems like a classic, Daniel Jones. Everyone's calling for his head. And he just comes back and puts up a good game and makes Giants fans feel good for a week, and then reminds everyone soon enough why they hate him. So that's just what it seems like. But the home road splits over a 5+ year sample size are pretty crazy. So like Daniel Jones, if you can't get Stafford, or if you're just kind of weary about all the injuries for the Rams.
Yeah, and when it comes to Justin Fields, hopefully you ended up taking that week 1 start bet at 9-1.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's also a chance that Russ can get hurt or something, and sure enough, that's what happened. So that bet cashed. I think it closed at plus 320. But man, it's going to be hard for Russ to get his job back if the Steelers keep winning with Fields under center too.
Yeah, shouts to the Fox cameraman, because at the end of that game, when the clock struck 0, they kind of capture everyone running from the sideline, jogging in to give daps to the other side, and they captured Justin Fields. But I feel like they did this purposely. Out of the corner of the camera, you just see a very angry looking Russell Wilson, not happy. He doesn't look happy at all. He's not celebrating. He just looks mad shook. Did I just lose my job? And Fields didn't even play that well. But Russell Wilson, we all know what Russell Wilson was thinking. So
wasn't he wearing full pads?
Yeah, he's wearing full pads. I mean, I feel like he had a pretty low, his haircut was very lower than I've seen it. So yeah, is he balding? I don't know. Maybe he's stressed out. But,
but Russ wearing full pads, even though he's inactive, is one of the most Russ things ever.
I mean, he's got to do those, what is it? Knee bends? What was he doing? I forget what it was.
You're talking about the plane?
Nah, on the plane. It was something else. Yeah. It was knee bends or knee raises, leg raises. I don't even remember, man. Yeah. But all right, let's jump over to running back. Who you targeting on the wire entering week 2?
Yeah, so these two backs, I wouldn't say they're week 2 plays. Again, check my initial week 2 ranks at Fantasy Labs to see who's ranked high enough for you to even start week 2. But I'm going with 2 backups. I moved up my backup running back upside chart significantly this week, and that's Bucky Irving of the Bucks, who's available in 79% of leagues, and Jaleel McLaughlin of the Broncos, who's available in 63% of leagues. And I was high on Bucky Irving heading into the season. I thought he could potentially push Rachaad White to have, more of a 50-50 backfield, maybe even leapfrog him, just because White's been so ineffective his first couple seasons. And Todd Bowles has kind of mentioned he wants to go with the hot hand, but there's no one really been there that to like kind of push Rachaad White. So they took Bucky Irving in the 4th round, like him as a talent. And sure enough, Irving was more efficient than White in week 1. So I think we could see this kind of turn into a murky 50-50 backfield sooner than later. And, Irving's always going to be a Rachaad White injury away of potential RB2 value. So he's a guy that, probably won't be that expensive this week, but you want to kind of grab him before he goes off. And I kind of like the fact that the Bucs play the Lions this week in week 2, because again, I expect Rachaad White to be the starting running back right now. He's probably still the lead back, but this is a brutal matchup. So he could have another inefficient game against the Lions run defense, which kind of could propel Irving, week 3 or sooner. So I kind of like the fact that he has a brutal matchup this week. So I'm high on Bucky Irving. I think that he could become an RB3 flex back pretty soon, even if Rachaad White is healthy. So I think he's a great stash right now. And Jamil McLaughlin, similar situation, but he has basically already made the Denver backfield a 50-50 one at worst. He got 5 catches for only 1 yard. I was watching that game. A couple of those, he got tripped up. He was close to, breaking, 5 to 10 run at least, but it was just a rough game for a lot of the backfield passing in that game. But he seems like, RB3 flex fringe guy, even with Javonte healthy right now, and has, RB2 upside if Javonte were to miss time. And McLaughlin's very explosive, even though he didn't have an efficient game. He can do a lot with fewer touches than most backs. So again, McLaughlin's not a guy you're probably trusting in week 2, but he's definitely worth a stash to kind of see how this evolves, where he could end up emerging as the lead back for a backfield. So he's another guy that he might not go for a ton of fab dollars this week, or, you probably don't need a number 1 waiver to get him, but he's definitely a better stash than I thought going into the season.
Yeah, that was just a weird game. Javonte outsnapped McLaughlin, but McLaughlin got like 6 more touches than Javonte, but none of them really gained any yardage either way.
Yes. They almost got 3 safeties too.
Yeah, on the other side, that was just, what a weird game. All right, for me, Jordan Mason has to be number 1. He probably gets another start this week. Adam Schefter reporting that there's a real chance that Christian McCaffrey could miss this week as well. Mason, 28 carries, 141 yards, and 1 touchdown rushing against the Jets. Added a catch as well, played 81% of the snaps. And if McCaffrey were to miss this week, he'd be my RB6 with Mason. So he's still available in 63% of leagues. He did get picked up in about a third of leagues, by people who saw, I guess, McCaffrey inactive. But if you can get him, I think he should be able to give you 1 start. But even if he doesn't, I feel like he's just such a valuable handcuff now that we know he'll essentially get the full Christian McCaffrey workload if McCaffrey's ever out. So even if you want to grab him and maybe try to trade him to the McCaffrey owner, if you have a high waiver priority, I think he's worth having on your roster as either a potential 1 week rental, or just a guy who you use as a trade chip, or just stash. Because if McCaffrey is getting up there in age, and he has had this injury all offseason, we really didn't know how serious it was. We're just finding out now how serious it was, and that with all the touches that he's had over his last few years, there's a chance he could be in and out of the lineup all year. So I think Mason is a guy that you definitely do want to roster. Now, if you I wouldn't blow my entire budget or anything like that on him, because he's not even a guarantee to start this week. But if you could get him for a reasonable spot and you have a high priority, I would take the plunge, just because again, this could just be one of those seasons for McCaffrey. He's had a few of those where it's just been in and out. And I think you have a season where he only played 3 games, and another one where he missed half the season as well. So Jordan Mason and Mitchell, remember, he's on IR, so this is the Mason show.
I was gonna ask,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just it's important to do you blow your entire fab on a guy that might not even start, but he's probably the top handcuff now. And my other question is, even when McCaffrey's healthy, do you think they give Mason enough touches to potentially
No.
even like flirt with? Yeah, right.
No.
And there's
No.
a chance. I trust Sean McVay the least. I trust Shanahan the second least when it comes to coaches. There's a
Mike
chance
McDaniel's got to be in there too.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I'm just.
He's got to be in. He's in that tree. He's in that tree.
Yeah, that's true. That is he is in that tree. That's very true. What if Mason gets benched for kind of spilling the beans that he knew he was starting on Friday? It could be like that. What was that? Jonah Gray. Who's the Patriots running back?
Jonah Gray. Yeah. Nah, I feel like Mason.
And then he got. I know. I'm kidding, but
I would hope not.
Yeah, no. I hope he doesn't get in trouble for that. But yeah, I'm with you. He's my RB6 if McCaffrey's out. He's essentially taking over the entire role. So it's a tough call though, like how much you want to spend. If you're in a rough spot at running back, obviously you want him more than others. But yeah, it's just a tricky situation when it comes to waivers and how much to invest in them.
You know what's funny? I think if you're in a rough spot at running back, you probably don't want to blow your hole. Like I would lean toward not trying to get him because you want to keep your fab for a guy like right now. Mason is a guy who might start this week and it's just a very valuable handcuff, but it's only week 1. Like week 2, 3, 4, 5, we might get a guy that's out for the season and you don't want to have blown your fab on Mason. So again, I think it's more of a, 20-ish% cap or something like that. Like I wouldn't really go crazy.
I think like, Kenneth Walker is banged up. I have no idea if he's playing or not this week, but like Charbonnet would be a cheaper version of Jordan Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, he would push, top 15 value if Walker's out this week. I just think that there's a lot of running backs that do have fringe RB1 upside. So yeah, those guys you can get cheaper. So it's so early in the season. You don't want to blow everything for 1 week rental. But again, if McCaffrey is dealing with something that could linger throughout the season, it does make Mason more valuable. It's just a very, very tricky and nuanced situation, obviously.
Yeah, I think the deeper you are at running back, the more you kind of can play around and be a little more aggressive and try to, like I said, you can, because then you can just use either him or one of your other pieces as trade chips or all of them together as trade chips too. So, if you're in a rough spot at running back, I would hold tight and maybe try to find a guy like a McLaughlin or somebody who could just give you that fringe flex value. Another guy might be Tank Bigsby, who's available in 96% of leagues. He was outsnapped by Travis Etienne on passing downs, but both got 12 carries. Bigsby was more effective, 73 yards to Etienne's 44. Etienne did get the touchdown and almost had a second, but fumbled on the 1 yard line. Yeah. Man, almost cost. I had the Jags plus 3.5. Almost cost us the cover there too, but that just doesn't bode well. And if I recall, that's not the first time Etienne has fumbled like as he was going into the end zone. I feel like he did that last year at least once too. So we don't know exactly how this workload is going to be split going forward. Etienne should still get 60-40 or better probably, but the fact that they both got 12 carries and Bigsby was so much more effective and Etienne had a disaster. It just doesn't bode well. So he should be a lot cheaper, but he is my RB 39 this week. So again, kind of a fringe flex value guy. Shouldn't break the bank. Kind of similar to McLaughlin.
Yeah, I think I was a year or two early on Bigsby because he did absolutely nothing last year. But I also said he would be a potential goal line vulture for Etienne. So maybe after that fumble, he does get the next opportunity. We'll see, but that would be a massive hit to Etienne's value. And I kind of thought that they might split the carries a little bit more evenly this week just because it was 150 in Miami. Usually when it's that hot, running backs, don't see a full workload. But Bigsby looks sharp, and, Peterson has been talking him up. So definitely matched the coach speak there. But, yeah, he's definitely already in that kind of fringe RB3 flex discussion.
Yeah, and even though it was at Miami, remember, Jacksonville does play in Jacksonville. So it's not the only game where it's going to be hot.
Right.
Like this week, they play at home against Cleveland. Yep. Then they're on the road a couple of times. But, they're back home in week 5, week 7, 8. So, 5 and 8. 7, I think they're overseas. But, it's there should be opportunities for Bigsby. And he just looked better than Etienne, at least in week 1. All right, let's jump to a wide receiver. Who do you like?
Got to go with our boy DeMarcus Robinson. It's unfortunate that Puka's going to miss a handful of games now, but it's going to have to be Robinson and potentially Tyler Johnson, who you'll speak on, kind of stepping up. And in terms of Robinson, he's not really going to see a boost in playing time. He's already kind of maxing out in that regard, but he will see a spike in targets, and he's going to move up the target pecking order, so to speak. So he's a guy that he performed well in the scheme at the end of last year. I was very high on him heading into this season. So, I think he's the safer option out of the two. But I think either way, we're adding these Rams wide receivers and tight end. I'll talk about him later. But we're adding these Rams wide receivers because, this is a great scheme for wide receivers. They're going to see a ton of playing time. They play a ton of 11 personnel. So I think Robinson, if, in your league that starts 3 wide receivers, he's in play this week. He's my wide receiver 39. Being a bit cautious early on, I think Cooper Kupp's is going to be, a target hog. But I think Robinson is in the mix as, wide receiver flex play this week.
Yeah. I mean, he was pretty much on the field for every snap almost. And that should continue now that there's no Nakua. So that whole Rams offense, I mean, looked pretty good. Stafford looks pretty good. So they just got to survive those O-line injuries, but that could just mean more shorter passes and more PPR value for everyone to go around. Last week, mentioned Shakir. He actually finishes number 23. He's like 50-50 now, but if he's still out there, I think he's still worth a speculative ad. But Tyler Johnson is the first guy I want to talk about. He's available in 100% of leagues. No one had him, but the Rams, they have 6 wide receivers active on game day. So they do the thing where not many teams do this, but it looks like they have 1-for-1 replacements. I believe Atwell and Robinson, play the same spot. And then Tyler Johnson was the 1-for-1 Nakua replacement. And then Jordan Whittington, Cooper Kupp. So with Nakua going down, running only 29% of the routes, Johnson ran 65% of the routes, caught 5 balls for 79 on 7 targets, was targeted on 21% of his routes. And I think he could actually be this year's Demarcus Robinson. He looked really good out there. And if he's going to be the 1-for-1, which we're not 100% because, now with a week to practice, they might switch it up. But it's a short week because they, played on Sunday Night Football. So it's a little bit of a shorter week. But I do think he's worth a speculative ad because Stafford is always capable of throwing for 300. This is a pretty decent offense, even with the injuries. And, if he could put up 5 for 79, it's kind of like Robinson last year. I think he had, 4 or 5 top 25 finishes in a row or something like that to close out the year. So that could be Johnson. I mean, he already put up like 79 yards on 7 targets is nothing to sneeze at. So I do. He's right outside my top 50 this week. So again, I do have Robinson higher, but if you are in a deeper league or you just want to kind of stash a wide receiver 4 or 5 that could have wide receiver 3 or flex-ish value going forward, or at least for the next month, Tyler Johnson shouldn't be too expensive. And he's available everywhere. So I would grab him. And then another guy, I was surprised to see who's available in this many leagues, but Brandon Cooks is still available in just over 70% of leagues. He had 4 for 40 and a touch on 7 targets, 84% route rate in week 1, targeted on 23% of his routes. CeeDee Lamb, a little bit fewer routes than you would expect, but I think that might have just been toward the because of the blowout. But either way, Cooks was right around the season average he had last year in routes in the mid 80s. And Marshawn Lattimore for the Saints, their top corner, his hamstring is bothering him, so that means Cooks might get more time on rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry. So that could be a good matchup for Cooks. So do like Cooks. I have him as a top 40 receiver this week against New Orleans. And then Josh Palmer, you liked him last week. I still think people should add him this week, even though he didn't really do anything, because he did run a route on 92% of Herbert's dropbacks. So he is a guy where, and the Chargers weren't, their pass under expectation was about 3%, so it wasn't nothing crazy. It wasn't like one of those, we're only going to throw like 20 times a game type thing. Like I think they still know they have Justin Herbert, and as he gets more and more chemistry with Palmer, and which he already has, and McConkey and Johnston and Hurst, I think they'll be comfortable throwing a decent amount. So Josh Palmer, anytime you have 90% plus routes with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, I still think you should add that, even though McConkey had the better game and probably could end up as that number one receiver sooner than later. You still want the routes and the snaps, and Palmer, as you've mentioned, has had big games with Herbert in the past.
Yeah, when it comes to Brandon Cooks, I'm not sure if you're factoring in it. Like, do you have Jake Ferguson in or out with your projections with him right now?
I've Ferguson in because they said they're pretty optimistic on him, but I mean, either way, I think Cooks is a guy who they were talking about, like beat writers were talking about. He had a much better camp this year. Last year, I think it was I forget what happened, but I don't know. Just he didn't really get going. I think he had one big game against the Giants to kind of save his stats. But they said all offseason with Lamb out, that Cooks and Dak's chemistry was a lot better. So Cooks has been a guy who's been like a wide receiver 2-ish guy in the past. So I think he should at least be on benches if you're not going to start him. All right, let's finish it up. Well, no, not finish it up because we got our defense and kicker streamers. How could I forget? But let's finish up the skill positions with tight ends.
15 minutes of kicker discussion coming right
up.
Oh,
yeah. Who do you like at tight end?
So got to stick with the Rams here. Colby Parkinson still available in 94% of leagues. And, obviously guys like Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson get a huge boost with Puka out. But, Parkinson does too. And, he saw, 82% routes run rate, which was expected. We expected him to fill in for Higbee until he returns and potentially even after he returns. But he should also see a spike in target rate without Nakua, which could put him like in fringe tight end 1 range. When it comes to Robinson and especially Tyler Johnson, I don't know if you can necessarily trust them in your starting lineup. But when it comes to the tight end position and what a dumpster fire it is right now, I think Parkinson, especially if you have David Njoku and Jake Ferguson, he's definitely worth an ad. Parkinson opens the week as my tight end 14. I think he has a ton of upside, but he's a guy that's probably more likely to actually end up in starting lineups than even the receivers, just based on the opportunity and the position. So, Parkinson's the guy that I think is trending up. It might be overlooked with the Puka news, but he gets a huge boost from this as well.
Yeah, I actually have Parkinson inside my top 10 to open the week. I mean, nice. It's just 82% route rate, and a bunch of guys are hurt. So, like him as well. I'll talk about Isaiah Likely. He's still available at 90% of leagues. Good call by you. I think it was in the DFS pod. You liked him in that Baltimore KC opener. And, we both thought that he might end up getting snaps similar to Beckham because they didn't really replace Beckham. And they did go more to tight end, and Likely ended up running a route on 69% of Lamar Jackson's dropbacks, which was actually more than Beckham average. He was in the mid to high 50s last year. 12 targets, 9 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown, and almost a 10th catch and a second touchdown by a toe. So, Likely, I mean, who was, I don't know, most people are probably too young to remember, but what do they call it? Like Wally pipped in baseball when you get like Mark Andrews barely ran more routes than Likely. He was on the bench for some key spots, and I know he had the car accident and whatnot, but as far as I know, he wasn't injured. So that was kind of interesting to see them so close in routes. I think Andrews was 75%, Likely was 69%, and Likely had the much bigger game. So that's something to kind of watch for. But it's possible they even draw even by the time the season's over, because you always say it. He's the most talented backup tight end, and he's getting a chance to kind of break out, and it just might be he's one of the most talented tight ends, period, in the league. Mm-hmm. So. He was targeted on 34% of his routes, which is kind of similar to Andrews when he broke out in year 2, I believe. So, a lot of parallels here. So this is a guy you definitely want to add, and I think he's going to be would you say he's a tight end 1 going forward, just based on the week 1 usage, or what?
Oh man, that's tough. I would say that he's still just outside of it. Probably need another week of data, but it did look like Spags the Chiefs defensive coordinator was, really trying to slow down Mark Andrews, who's double teamed quite a bit. I wouldn't expect that going forward. I think defenses are going to take Likely way more seriously now. But we kind of talked about this, that the Ravens were trying to, have more 2 tight end sets, have Likely on the field with Andrews. So he's going to pop because he's very talented, but it's probably just going to be tough for him to maintain this based on his playing time. And to be honest, the Ravens aren't going to be trailing in every game. Probably more likely than not, they're going to be in leading game scripts going forward. So it's just a tough call. This is obviously the kind of upside he has, and why he should probably roster, because he's an absolute top 10 tight end, top 5 tight end if Andrews misses time. Kind of a unique tight end. But like for this week, I'm still being a bit conservative. So I have him, around like tight end 14, 15 range. But certainly if you're going for upside, he has that. So kind of like a Taysom Hill type of tight end, right? Like if you're just tight end position is a dumpster fire, it's low scoring. Why not just play the guy with a ton of upside? So that's the case I would make for Likely if you want to play him for week 2.
Yeah, I have him as a top 10 guy in week 2. I mean, like you said, the position's a dumpster fire, and the fact that he's kind of doing similar things to Andrews, and Andrews getting a little older. Andrews had struggled with injuries at times. I think Likely has Andrews upside, even if Andrews is plays. So with that, at this position, I think you got to at running back with Mason. It's like, that's where it's like, okay, you might only get 1 week if that, but Likely, I think this guy's going to be a fringe starter at worst at the position all year long, because I think they're really trying to get him on the field. And after he did that in week 1, now it's like, now they have to. Like Monken cannot. It's like the front office is like, here's Derrick Henry now, run the ball. It's like Isaiah Likely's like, all right, I'm here. Like, you got to play 2 tight end sets now.
Yeah, so, that's a good comp with Jordan Mason. Like, we know he's not going to Wally Pipp Christian McCaffrey. Right. And by the way, Wally Pipp was first baseman for the Yankees. He was ruled out with an injury, and he was replaced by Lou Gehrig. If you've ever heard of him, and the rest is history. But yeah, Andrews is more likely to get Wally Pipp than CMC is Jordan Mason. That's for sure.
Yeah. CMC's job is very, very secure. But Andrews is like, if both of them are on the field running the same amount of routes or close to it, there's a non-zero chance Likely could be more productive. All right, defense. Who do you like?
Well, let's see. Who did the Patriots play? Oh, they play the Seahawks. So I'm going with the Seahawks. They're available in 57% of leagues. And like I just joked about, like anybody playing the Patriots is going to kind of shoot up my ranks. But the Seattle defense looked solid in week 1. I figured new head coach Mike McDonald would turn things around, but it's shocking how quickly he kind of did, because they ranked first in DVOA and defense after week 1. They looked great. Albeit against, the Broncos, and Bo Nix was afraid to throw the ball beyond 10 yards, but still they look great. This is going to be a very tough spot for the Patriots to put up points. So they open the week as my number 4 defense. And as always, when it comes to defense, doesn't mean I think they're going to finish top 5, but I think, when it comes to sacks, points allowed, more predictive stats, they're checking all those boxes this week against the Patriots. So love the Seahawks, and maybe they do turn into more of a long-term stash. We'll see, but I was very impressed with their defense in week 1 at least.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some talented corners. Just got to hope the Patriots actually throw the ball enough, because that was, I think the Bengals were like 31st in defense last week because the Patriots didn't throw the ball. They just handed it off. So we got to hope the Seattle offense can put up some points. But I did hit on Minnesota last week. They were a top 3. This week, I'm going to target the Panthers and go with the Chargers, even though they're on the road. They're available in 89% of leagues. And Carolina allowed a top 5 finish to New Orleans, 4 sacks, 2 picks, a fumble recovery, just 10 points allowed. 10 points did New Orleans allow, And Bryce Young, I mean, I thought he was going to be better. I thought Canales was going to be able to fix him, but it doesn't look like if anything, it looks like his fundamentals might have gotten worse. It's like if you just were playing Madden and you turn the pass accuracy slider all the way down. So it's like you're just in the pocket with a clear lane to throw, and you just press the button to throw, and it just goes like 5 yards wide of the receiver. That's Bryce Young. Almost every time. It's really troubling. Like at this rate, I mean, Jamarcus Russell, part of the reason he was considered like the biggest bust of all time is because he was bad, but he also was unavailable a lot of the time. But like Bryce Young, he could just play and just play terribly. Like he might overtake Russell at this pace. So it's looking bad. Now it's week one. Sometimes week one is not indicative of the rest of the season. I remember when I think the Patriots like won the Super Bowl back in 2000. They got shut out like 31 by the Bills in week one or something like that. So like weird stuff does happen in week one, but man, like that was just disconcerting to see, especially with Tampa Bay and Mayfield performing so well without Canales. It was just, I mean, that was bad. So and this Charger defense held the Raiders to 10 points, and the Panthers are worse offensively, I think, than the Raiders right now. So going with LAC. All right, now we can close it out. Kicker. You hit on Chase McLaughlin. He posted a top 5 week last week. Who do you like this week?
Matt Prater, available in 94% of leagues. They're at home against the Rams, playing at home indoors. It should be a shootout, and the Cards have about the 6th highest implied team total of week 2. And Prater's just, a solid kicker all around, but especially from deep. He has 5 or more 50-yarders in each of the last 5 seasons. 75% career make rate beyond 50. Absolutely insane. So they just trust anytime they're, within, say, 63 yards field goal range, they're going to attempt it with him. So he opens the week as my number 5 kicker, which is definitely the highest among, kickers that are widely available. And he is available in, like I said, 94% of leagues this week.
Yeah, I have Prater as my number 7. And then I have the guy I'm about to talk about, Josh Carty, as number 8, and he's just the other kicker in this game. And this game is there's a total of about 49. It's close to a pick 'em. I think it started with the Rams favored, and then with the Nakua news, now the Cards are favored by I think a point or so. But Carty did go 2 of 2 in his debut. McVay is notoriously conservative, so I think he will get some attempts, and he did nail 41 of 45, 91% the last 2 years at Stanford. This game, one of the reasons it has a higher total is because no weather in the Arizona retractable roof stadium. So, like both kickers in this game. All right, that's going to do it for our NFL Week 2 waivers episode of the Fantasy Flex. Make sure to subscribe to the Fantasy Flex podcast so you don't miss an episode all season. And check out fantasylabs.com for all of our fantasy football content. Don't forget to use the promo code FLEX40 for $40 off. You can find Sean on X at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.